Hi, and welcome to my advanced edge flip tutorial. In this video, I'm going to be talking about all of the ways you can flip edges using 3-style. So the most simple way to flip edges is with an alg that flips your buffer. So in this case, I'm going to be saying that df is my buffer, and a piece outside of your buffer, like uf. And the way most beginners learn to solve this is with just a single alg that flips both pieces, like this. And beginners will usually learn one or two algorithms like this, maybe not just df and uf flip, but maybe df and ub flip or some other piece, and then they'll use setup moves to solve the other edges. So if I have a case like this, where df is flipped and br is flipped, a beginner would use a setup like r prime u to set up their uf flip case, and then do the alg, and then just undo the setup move. Now, this method is good for beginners as it's quite simple. However, once you know 3-style, there are much faster ways to flip edges. So flipping one edge outside of your buffer using a cycle break. Now, there's going to be an alg on screen to set up to the case I'm in, and just scramble it in your orientation so that you can follow along. So once again, I'm going to be using df as my buffer. So I have to go here to br, and then I hit my buffer piece and I have a cycle break. Now, I also see that I have this edge flipped, ul, and I can flip it while breaking into the new cycle. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to shoot to the target I need to shoot to, which is br, and then I'm going to choose any sticker or any side of this ul piece. For simplicity's sake, I'm just going to be using ul. So we do that comm. And now, to complete flipping the edge and breaking into the rest of the cycle of the pieces, we shoot to the opposite side of the piece we just shot to. So I just shot to ul, now I'm going to shoot to lu, and I'm going to choose any of the other unsolved pieces to shoot to break into the cycle of the remaining edges. So I'm just going to choose lb for the sake of this example. So I shoot to the opposite side of the piece lu, and then any edge, lb. And as we can see, this edge is now flipped, and we've broken into the remaining cycle. So I can go ahead and solve these edges like normal using 3-style. Now, it's important to note that this method only works when you have an odd number of edges in your cycle. So as you saw there, I had one edge in my primary cycle, and then I had a cycle break. If I had 2 edges in my cycle, this method would not work. An even number of edges would require a different method for flipping the edge, and we're going to talk about that now. So here we have another case. Scramble will be on screen, and just do it in your orientation to get it the same way I do. Now, what we have here is a cycle where I need to solve 4 edges and flip a 5th edge. For the first 2, I need to go to RF and then LF, and I solve this just like normal using one comm, normal 3-style solution for those pieces. Now, my next cycle is ULBL, and I also need to flip this edge. However, I'm not going to solve just ULBL. I'm going to do it a little differently. Now, if I want to solve this 3-cycle and flip this edge, I can actually do it with 2 commutators instead of 1 commutator and 1 flipping alg. The first thing we have to do is we have the cycle ULBL. Now, we want to shoot to the first target, UL, and then we want to choose any orientation of this piece, UR or RU, it doesn't matter. I'm going to use UR, and we're going to shoot to it as well. So our first cycle is going to be DF, UL, UR. Now, to complete the flip and solve the final target of that initial cycle, we're going to shoot to the opposite side of the flipped edge and the opposite side of the final target. So initially, the cycle was ULBL, however, we're going to shoot to LB. And initially, we shot to UR on this edge, so instead we're going to shoot to RU. So this final cycle is going to be RU, LB. And like that, I'm able to solve one 3-cycle and one flipped edge using 2 comms instead of using 1 comm and 1 edge flip alg. That flipping strategy has the potential to be very fast, as with a bit of practice you can force very fast comms like I did with that 5 mover. It is a very, very quick alg to execute. This method does take quite a bit of practice though, as you obviously have to think about the different orientations of the pieces while you are doing the algs. So think ahead is a bit of an issue, however with practice you can get it just as automatic as you would any other thing you're doing in a solve. Now, oftentimes you're going to get a case where you have 2 edges flipped outside of your buffer. Like so. As we can see, UL is flipped, UR is flipped. My buffer, it could be DF, it could be UF, it doesn't really matter, but it's 2 edges outside my buffer. What do? We can't use the previous strategy of using a comm because there are 2 edges and that only flips 1, and we can't really use cycle breaking because it's just not very efficient. However, there is a really easy way to construct 2 flip algs using 2 comms, and it's very easy to learn these algs just because they all have a very similar structure. So we're going to call your first piece AB and your second piece CD. So what you're going to do is you're going to use your buffer and you're going to shoot to AB and then to CD. So in a case like this, we're just going to call this AB and this CD. And then to finish the flip, you have to shoot to DC, the opposite orientation of CD, and then back to AB. So opposite orientation would be here, and then back to AB would be here. Now, that's a bit complicated, and in a solve, you're not actually going to be thinking about it like that. However, there's a bit of a way you can standardize it and play around with these algs. So the first thing that should be noted is that most of these algs are a combination of a 4 or 5 mover and an 8 or 9 mover. So they have the potential to be very, very fast just because they're going to be about 13 moves. Also, you shouldn't be trying to do these in solves. You should actually be trying to play around with them outside of solves and then learning the algs. So in a case like this, where I have this edge flipped and this edge flipped, I know I can do a 5 mover like that, and then an 8 mover like that, and it'll flip these 2 edges. And I don't think about when I'm doing a solve, oh, I need to do that 5 mover, and now I have to do opposite side, same side, blah, blah, blah. I just know from experience that doing those 2 algs will flip both of those edges. So as a viewer, what you should take from this is to just play around with those sort of 5 mover, 8 mover combinations and see what types of algs you can create. See if you can create cyclic shifts. So I demonstrated how to solve these 2, and I could possibly do an S setup to that same alg, and then it cancels the last move to flip these 2 edges instead of these 2 edges. So there are lots of little tricks like that that you just need to play around with and learn these algs intuitively for yourself for them to be most effective. And lastly, I just want to talk about 4 flips. So 4 flips are very rare, and it's not important to know many cases just because there's so many, but algs like M prime U prime times 4, flip 4 edges, they're very simple to learn, and really just fiddling around with stuff like this, much like the way you would fiddle around with the 2 flips outside of your buffer, it's just good practice. You should definitely try to learn a few of these. Now, the one alg I do think you should learn is the 4 flip for 4 edges on the U face. Just because you might have a situation where you have 2 pieces on the U face flipped and you can use R and L setup moves to bring other edges onto the U face, apply the 4 flip alg, and then undo the setup moves. But honestly, I think I've only used a 4 flip once or twice in a solve, so you can kind of learn this at your own discretion. It's not especially useful, but maybe from a bragging rights kind of standpoint, it's fun to say, oh yeah, one time I did this crazy solution. So that's all for flipped edges. I know that this type of video is a bit less in-depth and a bit quicker paced than some of my other tutorials like the Advanced M2 tutorial or some of my floating videos. However, I do plan on releasing a few more videos in this style of just other concepts for advanced blind that, if you already know 3-style, are good to implement in your solves. So keep a lookout for that. Thanks for watching, and I hope this was helpful to everyone.